Would you risk your health to vote this November? Risk your life to vote amid a pandemic? Well, you don't need to, because the answer is as simple as an envelope.
There will be coronavirus in the fall.
That we're going to have two viruses circulating at the same time.
We ran an election, but in a way that protected the health of our fellow Ohioans.
The whole system will be stressed even more. So we need to do things now.
There's been a gaslighting of Americans since our inception.
People shouldn't have to choose between voting and their health.
The experts are clear. The coronavirus will be here this November. Some predict a record number of Americans will vote, maybe 156 million. And an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows 2/3 of Americans support voting by mail, even if it's just for this year. So the straightforward approach goes like this.
Vote by mail is the safest way to vote in a pandemic.
But the president doesn't want everyone to vote by mail.
That if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again.
No matter your political views, that should raise a lot of questions. So I've done a lot of research here, and I've talked to some really smart people. I'm gonna tackle 5 of the biggest questions. I'll give you the short answers first, and then we'll dive deeper. 1. Does voting by mail, as the president claims, favor Democrats? No. Ask one of these 13 Republicans in Congress. Well, does it increase voter fraud? Nope, that is a myth. Data just doesn't support that claim. Of the 5 states which vote entirely by mail, aren't they all just blue states? No, Utah is red, Colorado is purple. Okay, well, can the other 45 states, especially 5 key swing states, get to a nearly all-mail election by this November? Probably, but there is no time to waste. Last question, what if America just does nothing? Well, that probably won't be a pretty picture. And let's start our deep dive there.
This morning, people in Wisconsin have a tough choice to make.
I'm a NICU nurse, and I decided to come because I don't want to be disenfranchised.
This line stretches all the way around this school and then over to the backside and through a football field. And you also hear a deep frustration that people have. People don't like the fact that they're forced to come out here.
Courts, including the Supreme Court, effectively forced people to vote in person amid this pandemic. Some waded through severe storms, and all of them risked their health. By the time I'm recording this, in Milwaukee County alone, at least 40 people, possibly more, caught COVID-19 while voting. Some of them, poll workers. So if people don't vote in person, will there be a lot of fraud?
Now, mail ballots, they cheat, okay?
So you were highly critical of mail-in voting, mail-in ballots for voting.
I think mail-in voting is horrible.
But you voted by
It's
mail
corrupt.
In Florida's election last month, didn't you?
Sure, I could vote by mail for that.
How do you reconcile
Because I'm
that?
allowed to.
But what's the actual evidence of voter fraud?
Election integrity matters to every American.
The president's own commission, formed after the 2016 election, found no widespread evidence.
I feel inclined, since I'm the chief election official for Jefferson County, Alabama, to say that I have not seen evidence of voter fraud in Jefferson County.
Research from Rutgers puts the amount of fraud at 0.000001. The Brennan Center has the number even lower. Add an extra 0 there, 0.0000001. So I also asked Democrat Stacey Abrams about this.
We know that voter fraud is almost mythological in America.
She founded Fair Fight Action after losing the Georgia governor's race amid suspicion of voter suppression.
Even the conservative organization, the Heritage Foundation, lists on their site 1,277 proven instances of voter fraud. All of those are not from one election, but even if we put all 1,277 of those cases in the 2016 election, 0.00009%. 5 zeros and then 9. How do you get people off of this soapbox that if we vote by mail, there's gonna be fraud?
Education. Explaining what vote by mail is. We know it works because every single state in America has vote by mail. This is just scaling it up. And we know it works because Donald Trump has availed himself of this opportunity. I would say if it works for the President of the United States, it works for America.
And Ohio's Republican Secretary of State tweeted in reply to the president that voter fraud is not a problem in Ohio. The same stance from Pennsylvania.
Is voting by mail secure?
Absolutely, 100%.
And the red state of Utah.
There's no real indication there's any kind of widespread voter fraud. But we're not seeing anything widespread that makes us think that vote by mail has this huge likelihood of being fraudulent.
For this question, I went to a nonpartisan expert, Michael McDonald from the U.S. Elections Project at the University of Florida.
Is there actually evidence or data that backs up claims like President Trump has been making that Republicans just don't do well when a lot of people vote?
No, there's really no evidence here. In fact, the first election that Colorado ran as an all-mail ballot election, Republican Senator Cory Gardner won his election. So there's nothing inherent about mail ballot elections which prevents Republicans from voting. And
where's this fear coming from? Sorry to interrupt you. Where's this fear coming from?
I don't think it's so much a fear. I think it's a political calculation to put into place some restrictions that are going to make it more difficult for what they perceive to be Democrats to vote.
Okay, looking toward November and a presidential election amid a pandemic. There are 5 states which vote entirely by mail. California joining that list by executive order from Governor Newsom, and 2 other states where a large majority already vote by mail. So 42 states plus DC have some decisions to make. Or there's a universal piece of legislation from Democratic Senators Klobuchar and Wyden to expand voting options by mail, early voting, even printing ballots at home, and helping states pay for it all. So I asked a conservative think tank why they would oppose that plan.
Mandating that we have an all-mail election in November, mandating that now at a federal level is not the right decision. We need to see how the situation develops.
What if it's the end of October and this happens quickly, and then states say, gosh, we don't have time to do this now. If we had done it in April or May, we could have done it, but now it's too late, and then we're
but that I think shows your lack of knowledge. You have to excuse me, but your lack of knowledge about election officials and how they operate.
The thing is, I do have knowledge because I've actually talked to state elections officials, like the Republican head of elections in Utah, a state that votes entirely by mail.
So for someone to say that states have time, no, they can figure this out later on before the November election, that's not accurate in your mind.
No, the longer they wait, the harder it's going to be to figure this out. I think the sooner they act, the better. The best time to decide to be vote by mail is probably last year. The next best time is right now.
Washington's Secretary of State agrees.
I am very concerned that with only 6 months really to implement vote by mail or absentee voting in a jurisdiction, that it's going to be a heavy lift.
These 29 states all had fewer than 10% of votes cast by mail in 2018.
And these states don't have any of the infrastructure to run an all-mail ballot election at this point in time. And so they're going to need to do a lot of ramping up between now and November.
And among them, look specifically at these 5 states, some of the swing states which will undoubtedly determine this presidential election.
The safest and most accessible elections are one where we anticipate all of our needs. And we already have the tools in our toolbox. And my hope is that we remember that democracy is not partisan. Democracy is an opportunity for us to be heard. Our selections may be partisan, but the election itself is not.
Clearly, this is a big, messy issue. It is constantly changing. There are already more than 20 lawsuits filed seeking to expand voting by mail, one very prominent lawsuit in Texas. But there are 3 things you can do right now before the election. 1, contact your member of Congress. Here's how to find them, and tell them what you think about the Emergency Ballot Act of 2020. 2, familiarize yourself now with your state's election rules. Again, it is different in every state. 3, if you do vote by mail, consider your signature. Sometimes I sign my name sort of like that. It's just scribble. But odds are, on an official ballot, that won't cut it. So think about your signature. Maybe match it to your driver's license if you have one. Make sure that your vote counts.